If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Because sometimes, the most unexpected journeys lead us to the people who change our lives forever. She had crossed continents for love, but at midnight she sat alone in a foreign airport with no money, no hotel, and no man waiting for her. Then a stranger started watching her. The international terminal was almost empty. Most of the passengers had already gone home, and the bright airport lights suddenly felt cold. Amara Okoye sat in a corner of the VIP lounge, holding her phone with trembling hands. The last message from the man she thought she loved still glowed on the screen. "I'm on my way. Wait for me." That message had arrived 6 hours ago. Since then, every call had gone unanswered. Every new message remained unread. She opened her banking app again. Zero. The money she had saved for the trip was gone. The hotel reservation she had booked online did not exist. Even the phone number of the man she came to meet had suddenly disappeared. A deep silence filled her chest. For the first time in many years, Amara felt completely alone. A security officer approached her politely. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but your lounge access has expired. We need to close this section." She looked up slowly. "I don't have anywhere else to go tonight." The man hesitated, sympathy in his eyes. "I'm sorry." Amara forced a small smile and stood up. She picked up her suitcase, but its broken wheel dragged across the floor with a painful scraping sound. She walked toward the main terminal and stopped beside a large window overlooking the runway. Outside, rain covered the glass. Inside, tears threatened to fill her eyes. But she refused to cry. Not here. Not after flying thousands of miles for a promise that never existed. She whispered to herself. I was foolish. At that very moment, a man in a dark suit looked up from his coffee. He had been sitting alone for nearly an hour. Tall. Calm. Expressionless. Yet something about the lonely woman near the window caught his attention. Kong Min-jae, the owner of the airline, watched as she tried to stay strong while carrying the weight of betrayal. Then her phone vibrated. A new message appeared. She opened it immediately. Her face lost all color. Slowly, she looked around the empty terminal as if someone might be watching her. Before she became the woman stranded in a foreign airport, Amara Okoye was the kind of person who carried everyone else's burdens while hiding her own loneliness behind a brave smile. 3 days earlier, Lagos was alive with its usual energy. Cars filled the streets, music drifted through the air, and inside a small office decorated with flowers and event banners, Amara was finishing another long day of work. She owned a modest event planning business that she had inherited from her late father. It was not a large company. It was not famous. But every chair, every table, and every flower arrangement carried her father's memory. A framed photograph sat on her desk. In it, her father smiled proudly while holding the keys to the business. Amara gently touched the frame. I kept my promise, Dad, she whispered. The company is still standing. For years, she had worked without rest. She organized weddings, business dinners, and community events. She solved problems for everyone around her, yet when she returned home every night, the silence in her apartment felt heavier. Then, almost a year earlier, she had received a message online. A man named Daniel. At first, it was simple conversation. Then came late-night calls. Long messages. Shared dreams. He listened to her stories about her father and encouraged her whenever business became difficult. For the first time in years, someone seemed to understand her. One evening, her best friend, Grace, looked at her and smiled. You keep checking your phone. You like this man. Amara laughed softly. I trust him. Grace's smile faded. You've never even met him. Amara looked out the window. Not everyone enters your life by accident. Weeks later, Daniel invited her to Korea. He said he wanted to meet her in person and discuss a future together. At first, she refused. But after months of conversations and promises, hope slowly won. She used her savings to buy a ticket. She packed carefully. Before leaving, she stood inside her office one last time and looked at her father's photograph. Maybe it's finally my turn to be happy. She had no idea those words would follow her across the world. Back in the airport terminal, Amara slowly lowered her phone after reading the terrifying message. Her hands trembled. Then she remembered something. The sender had used the exact nickname that only one person knew. The man who had disappeared. And if he could still send messages, then maybe he had never intended to meet her at all. The stranger behind her took another step forward. Before she could turn around, her phone vibrated again. A second message appeared. Do not trust anyone wearing a black suit. The man standing behind her looked like a stranger, but he carried his own scars, wounds hidden behind wealth, power, and a face that had forgotten how to smile. Amara slowly turned around. A tall man in a black suit stood a few feet away. The message on her phone suddenly echoed in her mind. Do not trust anyone wearing a black suit. Her heart raced. She took a cautious step backward. The man noticed her fear and stopped immediately. I didn't mean to scare you, he said calmly. His voice was deep and steady. I'm Kong Min-jae. The name meant nothing to her. But inside the airport, it meant everything. A few employees passing by lowered their heads respectfully as they saw him. Min-jae ignored them. His attention remained on the woman standing alone beside the window. He had seen many people pass through airports, business executives, celebrities, politicians. But something about Amara's expression felt familiar. The look of someone trying to stay strong while everything around them was falling apart. Because years ago, he had worn that same expression. 3 years earlier, his life had changed forever. His family had built one of the country's largest airlines. The company was famous, respected, and powerful. Then came betrayal. A trusted relative had secretly manipulated company decisions, causing enormous damage to the family business. The scandal nearly destroyed his father's health and shattered Min-jae's trust in people. Since then, he had kept everyone at a distance. No close friends. No relationships. No unnecessary emotions. Work became his entire world. People called him the cold CEO because he never smiled and never explained himself. But tonight, something felt different. He looked at the exhausted woman before him. You look like you haven't slept in days, he said quietly. Amara tightened her grip on her suitcase. Why are you talking to me? For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he said something unexpected. Because I know what it feels like when someone you trust disappears. The words surprised even him. Silence filled the space between them. Then a young airport manager hurried toward Min-jae. Sir, your car is ready. Amara's eyes widened. Sir? The manager looked confused. You don't know who he is? Min-jae's expression immediately hardened. But it was too late. The manager smiled nervously. This is Mr. Kong Min-jae, the owner of the airline. Amara stared at him. The quiet stranger was not an ordinary traveler. He was one of the most powerful men in the building. And suddenly, her phone vibrated for the third time. A new message appeared. She opened it and felt the blood drain from her face. The man beside you knows more than you think. Min-jae noticed her expression change. Before he could ask what was wrong, Amara slowly lifted her eyes and looked at him with fear and suspicion. A lonely woman had just been warned not to trust the man beside her, yet that same man was offering her the one thing she desperately needed, a safe place to stay. Amara slowly lowered her phone. She looked at Kong Min-jae with suspicion. The message on her screen kept repeating in her mind. The man beside you knows more than you think. Min-jae noticed the fear in her eyes. I can see that you're worried, he said calmly. But standing here all night won't help you. She said nothing. Outside, the rain grew heavier. The airport had become almost empty. Min-jae glanced at her worn suitcase and then at the exhaustion on her face. You don't have a hotel, do you? Amara's silence gave him the answer. He reached into his pocket and handed her a business card. There is a hotel near the airport. I own it. You can stay there tonight. She didn't take the card. And tomorrow, he continued, I can arrange a ticket if you want to go back home. Her expression suddenly changed. What do you think I am? She asked quietly. Min-jae frowned. She looked directly into his eyes. Someone who needs your charity? No. Then why are you helping me? For the first time, he hesitated. The truth was simple. He did not know. Maybe it was because she reminded him of himself years ago. Maybe it was because he hated seeing people abandoned. Or maybe it was because something about her sadness felt painfully familiar. You look tired, he finally said. And nobody should face a night like this alone. Amara looked away. For a moment, her eyes became glassy, but she quickly hid the emotion. I didn't come here to be pitied. His voice softened. I wasn't offering pity. Silence settled between them. Then she spoke. I spent years building my life. I solved every problem myself. I don't even know you. Min-jae nodded slowly. That's fair. He took back the business card and slipped it into his pocket. I won't force you. He turned as if he were about to leave. Then he stopped. Without looking at her, he said quietly. Sometimes accepting help isn't weakness. The words struck her harder than she expected. Because she had spent her entire life refusing to lean on anyone. For the first time that night, she wondered if she was simply tired of carrying everything alone. Then her phone rang. An unknown number. She answered immediately. There was only silence. Then a man's voice whispered. Do not leave with him. The call ended. At the exact same moment, Min-jae's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen and his expression changed completely. Someone had just sent him a photograph. It was a picture of Amara. Below the photograph was a single message. She is already part of this. Keep her there until we arrive. Taken only minutes ago inside the airport. The man offering her help was one of the richest people in the airport, and suddenly every act of kindness felt dangerous, calculated, and impossible to trust. Min-jae stared at the message on his phone. A picture of Amara. Taken only minutes ago. Someone was watching them. He quickly locked his screen before she could see it. But it was too late. Amara had already noticed the change in his expression. What happened? She asked. Nothing. The answer came too quickly. Her eyes narrowed. After everything that had happened tonight, she no longer believed easy answers. Then another airport employee approached them. Mr. Kong, should I prepare the presidential suite for your guest? Amara blinked. Presidential suite? The employee smiled politely. It's our chairman's private hotel. Chairman. The word hung in the air. She slowly looked back at Min-jae. You own the hotel too? The employee looked confused. And the airline, of course. Min-jae closed his eyes for a brief second. The damage was done. The employee excused himself and walked away. Silence followed. Then Amara laughed softly. But there was no happiness in it. Of course. What do you mean? Min-jae asked. She lifted her suitcase. You saw a stranded woman and decided to rescue her. That's not what happened. Isn't it? Her voice became sharper. You have your private hotel, your airline, your expensive suit, and I look like someone who needs saving. He looked at her carefully. I never said that. You didn't have to. Rain tapped against the huge airport windows. For a long moment neither of them moved. Then she spoke again. I didn't fly across the world to become someone's charity project. Something in her voice made him pause. This wasn't pride. It was pain. Years of carrying herself alone. Years of proving she didn't need anyone. Min-jae spoke quietly. Money doesn't make people less lonely. She looked at him. For the first time, there was something different in his expression. Not pity. Sadness. You think rich people don't suffer? He asked. She didn't answer. He looked toward the dark runway. I've had everything money can buy. Then his voice grew softer. And I still lost the people I trusted most. The words surprised her. For a brief second, the cold businessman looked like a tired man carrying old wounds. But before she could respond, his phone rang. He answered. A security officer spoke urgently. Sir, we've identified the man from the photograph. Min-jae's face hardened. Who is he? There was a pause. Then the answer came. He used a false identity, but he has connections to someone inside your company. Min-jae slowly lowered the phone. At that exact moment, Amara's screen lit up again. A new message appeared. Ask him if he knows the name Daniel Park. One message changed everything. The man who had stolen Amara's trust might not be a stranger at all, he might be connected to the powerful man standing beside her. Amara stared at the glowing words on her phone. Ask him if he knows the name Daniel Park. Slowly, she looked up at Min-jae. Do you know someone named Daniel Park? The color drained from his face. For the first time since they met, the calm CEO looked genuinely shocked. Why are you asking me that? He said quietly. He was the man I came here to meet. Silence. A heavy, uncomfortable silence. Min-jae's eyes darkened. That's impossible. Amara's heartbeat quickened. You know him. I knew him, he corrected. The difference in his words frightened her. Before she could ask another question, his phone rang again. This time, it was the head of airport security. Sir, we've recovered another security image. A few moments later, the photo appeared on his screen. Min-jae looked at it and froze. The picture showed the man using the name Daniel Park. He was standing near a restricted airport entrance. But he wasn't alone. Beside him stood one of Min-jae's senior executives, a man named Choi Sung-ho, who had worked for the airline for more than 15 years. Amara noticed his expression. What is it? Min-jae slowly turned the screen toward her. She looked at the photograph. You know that man? She asked. He works for me. The words hung in the air. Neither of them spoke. A cold feeling settled over Amara. This was becoming something far bigger than a fake online relationship. Min-jae suddenly began walking. Come with me. She hesitated. Where? I need answers. Minutes later, they entered a quiet executive office overlooking the runway. Rain still covered the windows. Min-jae opened a locked drawer and removed an old file. Inside were several documents and photographs. As he searched through them, one picture slipped onto the desk. Amara picked it up. Then she stopped breathing. The photograph was old and slightly faded. Two men stood side by side, smiling. One was much younger, but she recognized him immediately. It was her late father. And standing beside him was another man she had never seen before. Min-jae looked at the photo and slowly sat down. His voice became almost a whisper. That's my father. Amara looked at him in disbelief. Why would our fathers know each other? He didn't answer. Because he had just remembered something. Years ago, he had seen this exact photograph hidden inside his father's private study. And his father had once said only one sentence about it. Some friendships end because the truth becomes too dangerous. As thunder rolled outside, Min-jae opened the file completely. A sealed envelope fell onto the desk. Across the front, written in faded ink, were 4 words. For Amara Okoye only. Two strangers brought together by betrayal now shared the same mystery, and for the first time that night, neither of them wanted to walk away. The sealed envelope remained on the desk. Neither Amara nor Minjae touched it. The room suddenly felt smaller. Why would my name be on something inside your father's file? Amara asked softly. I don't know, Minjae replied. But I think our stories crossed long before tonight. He looked at her. There was no coldness in his eyes anymore. Only confusion. And curiosity. A few minutes later, they moved to the airport's private archive room, where old company records and photographs were stored. Rows of metal shelves stretched into the darkness. The only sound was the soft humming of the lights. Minjae placed several old boxes onto a table. If our fathers knew each other, there has to be something here. Amara nodded. For the next hour, they searched through files, newspaper clippings, and old documents. At first, they barely spoke. Then, slowly, the silence between them became easier. You really built your father's business by yourself? Minjae asked. She smiled faintly. It wasn't easy. And you never asked anyone for help? Help usually comes with conditions. He looked down at the papers. I used to believe that too. She studied his face. For the first time, he didn't look like a powerful CEO. He looked tired. Lonely. What happened to you? She asked quietly. He was silent for a long moment. Someone I trusted betrayed my family, he finally said. After that, I stopped believing people stay. The words settled between them. Amara understood that feeling more than she wanted to admit. She gently closed one of the old files. Maybe broken people recognize each other. He looked at her. For the first time that night, the corners of his mouth moved slightly. It wasn't quite a smile. But it was close. Then she found something. A yellowed folder hidden beneath a stack of documents. Inside were several letters tied together with an old ribbon. The handwriting was unfamiliar. But the signature at the bottom of the first page made her heart stop. Her father's name. She carefully unfolded the letter. The paper trembled in her hands. Beside her, Minjae opened another letter. His expression changed immediately. What is it? She asked. He slowly looked up. This one is from my father. Silence filled the room. They turned the pages together. The letters were not business documents. They were personal. And every page spoke of friendship, trust, and regret. Then Amara noticed something strange. There was a gap in the bundle. One letter was missing. At that exact moment, a small piece of paper slipped from between the pages and landed on the floor. Minjae picked it up. His face went pale. The truth hidden inside the old letters was more shocking than either of them imagined. Before they became strangers, their fathers had once been closer than brothers. Rain continued to fall outside the airport. Inside the archive room, Amara and Minjae sat across from each other, surrounded by old files and fading photographs. The bundle of letters lay open between them. Amara carefully unfolded another page. The date on the top was more than 20 years old. She began reading aloud. Asterisk, my friend, if our plans succeed, our companies will connect two worlds. One day our families will understand why we dreamed so big. Asterisk. She looked up. Your father and mine worked together. Minjae slowly nodded. He opened another letter. This one was written by his father. Asterisk, I trust you more than anyone. If something happens to me, protect the documents. Asterisk. The room became silent. Every letter revealed the same thing. Their fathers were not rivals. They had been business partners. Close friends. Men who shared ideas, dreams, and secrets. Amara picked up an old photograph from the box. In it, the two men stood in front of an unfinished airport terminal, smiling proudly. On the back of the photo was a handwritten sentence. Brothers by choice, not by blood. She swallowed hard. My father never spoke about any of this. Neither did mine, Minjae replied. He turned another page. Then his expression changed. The final paragraph had been torn away. Several other letters had missing sections too. Someone had deliberately removed parts of them. Why would anyone do that? Amara whispered. Min-jae looked thoughtful. To hide something. The answer sent a chill through the room. They continued reading. Then they found the last complete letter. The handwriting was shaky, as if it had been written in a hurry. Asterisk, if we disappear from each other's lives, remember this, it is not because of hatred. It is because the truth became too dangerous. Amara's hands trembled. Dangerous? What truth? She looked at Min-jae. Neither of them had an answer. Then she noticed something else. One space in the ribbon bundle was empty. The missing letter. The one someone desperately wanted hidden. She turned over the final page. A small note had been written at the bottom. One day our children will know why we made this choice. Silence filled the room. Their entire understanding of the past had changed. The catfishing, the mysterious messages, the old photograph, none of it seemed random anymore. Someone had brought Amara to Korea for a reason. And that reason had begun many years before she boarded the plane. Suddenly, the archive room lights flickered. Then went out. Darkness swallowed the room. A few seconds later, an emergency light turned on. The box of letters was still on the table. But one thing had changed. The missing space in the ribbon was no longer empty. A single envelope had appeared. And neither of them had placed it there. The answers she had searched for all night suddenly felt like another betrayal, and the man she had slowly begun to trust now seemed connected to her father's greatest loss. The emergency light cast long shadows across the archive room. The mysterious envelope lay on the table. Amara picked it up with trembling hands. Inside was a single page. Part of the writing had faded, but one sentence remained clear. Our partnership cannot continue. I have no choice but to walk away from our dream. Below the sentence was her father's signature. She looked at Min-jae. Then at the old photograph of their fathers standing together. A painful thought entered her mind. What if your family abandoned him, she whispered. Min-jae frowned. We don't know that. But what if it's true? Her voice broke slightly. My father spent his entire life struggling to keep his business alive. He worked until he was exhausted. He never spoke about these dreams because maybe someone destroyed them. Amara. She stepped back. You said your family owned one of the biggest airlines. Yes. And my father died with a small company and unfinished plans. The silence between them became heavy. For the first time that night, anger filled her eyes. Maybe this is why he never talked about Korea. Min-jae wanted to answer. But he had no proof. No explanation. Only questions. Amara slowly closed the envelope. I can't do this anymore. She picked up her suitcase. Where are you going? He asked. Back home. It's not safe. She shook her head. Nothing about tonight is safe. She started walking toward the door. Then she stopped. Without turning around, she said quietly. I trusted someone online and ended up stranded in a foreign country. A tear slipped down her cheek. I don't think I can trust another stranger. The word struck him harder than he expected. Because somehow, during this long night, he had stopped think of her as a stranger. He watched her walk away. For a moment, he almost let her go. Then his phone rang. The caller ID showed the name of one of his senior executives. He answered immediately. A nervous voice spoke. Sir. I need to see you. Right now. What happened? There was a pause. Then the man whispered. I know who brought Amara to Korea. Min-jae's expression changed. And I know why your father separated. The line suddenly filled with noise. A door slammed somewhere in the background. Then the executive spoke again, his voice shaking. They found me. The call ended. Min Jae stared at the phone. At the same moment, he looked through the archive window. Amara was already walking toward the exit. And she wasn't alone. Min Jae's heart pounded. He had no idea who the stranger was. But one thing became terrifyingly clear. If Amara left the airport now, she might be walking straight into the secret that someone had spent 20 years trying to hide. A man in a dark coat had started following her. The woman who wanted to escape the mystery had no idea someone was following her, and the next clue would prove that her journey to Korea had never been an accident. Min Jae rushed out of the archive room. Amara, he called. She turned just as the man in the dark coat disappeared into another corridor. What now? She asked, her voice tired. Before he could answer, his phone rang again. It was the same executive. This time the man sounded terrified. Please, come alone. Where are you? Min Jae asked. Terminal 3 maintenance office. The call ended. Min Jae looked at Amara. I need you to come with me. She crossed her arms. I thought you said it wasn't safe. I was right. A few minutes later, they reached the small maintenance office near the end of the terminal. The door was slightly open. Inside, the senior executive, Choi Sung-ho, stood beside a desk. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking. When he saw Amara, he lowered his head. I'm sorry, he said. Amara frowned. For what? The man swallowed hard. The person you knew as Daniel Park wasn't who he claimed to be. The room became silent. He used a false identity, Choi continued. He was hired. Amara's face turned white. Hired by who? I don't know, he replied quickly. I was only asked to arrange your arrival in Korea. She stared at him. You mean, someone planned all of this? He nodded. The online relationship, the plane ticket, the fake hotel reservation, everything. Her legs suddenly felt weak. For months, she had believed that someone cared about her. Now she discovered she had been part of a plan. But why? Tears filled her eyes, yet she refused to let them fall. Min Jae stepped closer. Why bring her here? He asked. Choi looked at Amara. Because someone believed she would lead them to something. What? Min Jae demanded. The executive shook his head. I don't know. I swear. Then his expression changed. His eyes moved toward the window behind them. Fear appeared on his face. They're here. What are you talking about? Min Jae asked. Suddenly, the lights flickered. A loud crash echoed from outside the office. Choi stepped backward. I shouldn't have said anything. Who? Min Jae demanded. The executive looked directly at him. You need to find the missing letter. It explains everything. Then he leaned closer and whispered. The person behind this is closer to your family than you think. Before he could say another word, a loud alarm suddenly sounded through the terminal. The office door slammed shut. And when Min Jae turned back toward the executive, he was gone. Only the open window remained. On the desk where Choi had been standing lay a single envelope. Across the front, written in black ink, were chilling words. Stop searching before the past destroys you too. Just when trust had begun to grow between them, one name turned the entire night into another painful betrayal. The envelope remained on the desk. Min Jae opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph. It showed a younger Choi Sung-ho shaking hands with a man in an expensive suit. Amara moved closer. Who is that? Min Jae's face became still. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he answered quietly. My cousin. She looked at him. Your cousin? He nodded. Kang Hyun-woo. He's one of the directors of the airline. There was another item inside the envelope. A document. At the bottom of the page was a signature. Kang Hyun-woo. Beside the signature was a short instruction. Bring her to Korea before the anniversary. Amara felt her stomach tighten. Her? Min-jae looked at her. You. Silence filled the room. Then another terrible thought entered her mind. She slowly stepped backward. No. Amara, listen to me. You knew. His eyes widened. What? You knew this had something to do with your family. I didn't. But your cousin's name is on the document. Her voice echoed through the office. The pain she had tried to control all night suddenly burst out. I trusted someone online and ended up trapped in a mystery connected to your family. Min-jae took a step toward her. I swear, I didn't know. She shook her head. Maybe this is all connected. Maybe your family ruined my father's dreams, and now you're trying to hide it. The words struck him deeply. Because years ago, he had accused his own family of hiding secrets too. He understood her anger. But it still hurt. I would never do that to you, he said quietly. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. How do I know that? Neither of them spoke. Outside, thunder rolled across the night sky. Finally, Amara whispered. I thought you were different. The disappointment in her voice was worse than anger. For the first time in years, Min-jae cared about what someone thought of him. And he hated that she looked at him like another liar. Then his phone vibrated. A message had arrived from an unknown number. He opened it. Attached was an old company record. At the top was the name of his cousin. Below it was a note. He ordered the files to be sealed 20 years ago. Min-jae's hands tightened. Another message appeared. Ask him about the missing letter. At that exact moment, the office door slowly opened. A tall man stepped inside. Perfect suit. Calm smile. Cold eyes. Amara looked at him in confusion. But Min-jae's expression changed completely. He knew exactly who it was. Kang Hyun-woo. His cousin. The man looked at both of them and smiled gently. Then he said the last thing either of them expected to hear. You've been searching for the truth all night, but neither of you is ready to hear it. The man they suspected finally appeared, and with him came a truth so unexpected that it changed everything they believed about the past. Kang Hyun-woo stepped into the office and calmly closed the door behind him. He looked first at Min-jae, then at Amara. So, he said softly, you found the letters. Min-jae's voice turned cold. You've been hiding something for years. Hyun-woo sighed. I was trying to protect this family. By bringing Amara here through a lie? Min-jae demanded. For the first time, the older man looked uneasy. He reached inside his coat and placed an old envelope on the desk. Its edges were worn with age. The missing letter, he said. Amara stared at it. Her hands trembled as she slowly opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter signed by both fathers. She began to read. The room became silent. Asterisk, if this letter is ever found, then the truth can no longer stay hidden. Asterisk. Her eyes moved to the next line. Asterisk, years ago, I made a mistake that nearly destroyed everything. Dangerous investors wanted control of our company and threatened our families. Asterisk. Min-jae stepped closer. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Asterisk, Amara's father saved my life and protected our business. To keep both families safe, we agreed to end our friendship in public and hide the truth forever. Asterisk. Amara's eyes filled with tears. She looked up. My father saved your father? Min-jae could barely speak. His own father had spent years carrying this secret. The letter continued. Asterisk, we chose silence because the wrong people would use our friendship for their own gain. Asterisk. Then came another shocking truth. Asterisk, if anyone ever tries to bring our families together again, be careful. Some people fear what this truth could reveal. Asterisk. The room fell silent. Slowly, Amara turned toward Hyunwoo. You knew all of this? He lowered his eyes. Yes. Then why did you bring me here? He finally looked at her. Because the truth would destroy me. Min-jae frowned. Hyunwoo's voice became heavy. I worked with those investors years ago. If your father's friendship became public again, my actions would be exposed. The room froze. You created the catfish scheme? Min-jae asked. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. I needed to find the letters before you did. Amara stepped backward in disbelief. Months of messages. Promises. The journey to Korea. All of it had been part of someone's desperate attempt to protect a lie. Then Hyunwoo spoke one final sentence. But I never expected the two of you to uncover everything so quickly. At that moment, another envelope slipped from inside the old letter. Across the front, written in Amara's father's handwriting, were chilling words. Open this only when you are ready to forgive. After a night filled with lies, two strangers finally chose the same side, and together they decided that the truth would no longer remain buried. The office was silent. The old letters lay open on the desk. Kang Hyunwoo looked tired, as if years of secrets had finally become too heavy to carry. Min-jae's eyes remained fixed on him. You used an innocent person to protect yourself, he said quietly. Hyunwoo lowered his head. I made terrible choices. Amara looked at the man who had stolen months of her life through deception. For a moment, anger filled her heart. Then she remembered the words written on the envelope. Open this only when you are ready to forgive. She slowly took a deep breath. What happens now? She asked. Min-jae looked at her. Now we tell the truth. He turned back to his cousin. The board meeting starts in 2 hours. Hyunwoo's expression changed. You can't do that. I have to. If this becomes public, everything will change. Min-jae nodded. Maybe it should. For years, he had protected the company by avoiding old wounds and difficult questions. But tonight had changed him. Silence would only create more pain. Amara stepped beside him. I came here looking for love and found a mystery instead, she said softly. I don't want revenge. I want the truth. Min-jae looked at her, surprised. A few hours earlier, they had been strangers. Now they were standing together. For the first time in many years, he didn't feel alone. He opened his laptop and began gathering the evidence. The letters. The photographs. The documents connected to the false identity. The messages sent to Amara. Every piece of the puzzle was finally coming together. Then he looked at his cousin. You have one chance to do the right thing. Hyunwoo closed his eyes. After a long silence, he opened a drawer and removed a small flash drive. I kept copies of everything, he said quietly. Min-jae frowned. Why? Because part of me always knew this day would come. He placed the drive on the table. It contains every record of what I did. Amara looked at him in disbelief. The truth was finally within reach. Then Min-jae's phone vibrated. A message from the airline's legal department. The board meeting has been moved forward. It begins in 30 minutes. He looked up. 30 minutes. Barely enough time. Then another message appeared. It contained only one sentence. If the truth comes out today, someone you love will lose everything. The room became silent. Min-jae slowly lowered the phone. Because he knew exactly who the message was talking about. His father. The truth they had searched for all night carried one final surprise. Sometimes the people we blame the most are the ones who have been protecting us in silence. The boardroom was already full. Directors sat around the long table, whispering among themselves. At the end of the room sat Min-jae's father, Kang Dae-sung. He looked tired. As if he had been carrying a burden for many years. The doors opened. Min-jae and Amara walked in together. Behind them came Kang Hyunwoo. Every conversation in the room stopped. "What is this?" one director asked. Min-jae placed the old letters on the table. "It's time everyone learned the truth." His father slowly stood up. "No," he said quietly. But Min-jae shook his head. "I spent years believing this family was hiding something shameful." He looked at the older man. "I was wrong." Silence filled the room. Then Hyunwoo spoke. "There is something you don't know." He turned toward Amara. "Your father never lost everything." She frowned. "What do you mean?" Hyunwoo opened the flash drive and displayed several old financial records on the screen. The room became silent. Every year, anonymous payments had been sent to support her father's struggling business. The transfers continued for nearly 20 years. Amara stared at the records. Then she saw the sender's name. Kang Dae-sung. Min-jae's father. Her hands began to tremble. "No," she whispered. The older man slowly nodded. "Your father saved my life and protected my company. I could never repay him." Tears filled Amara's eyes. "When we ended our friendship publicly, I promised I would never abandon him." He swallowed hard. "So I helped him quietly. He refused money at first, but I found other ways to keep his business alive." Amara could barely breathe. All these years, she believed her father had fought completely alone. He had not. Someone had been standing beside him from a distance. The room fell silent. Then Min-jae looked at his father. "Why didn't you tell me?" The older man smiled sadly. "Because some promises are meant to be carried, not spoken." A tear rolled down Amara's cheek. Everything she believed about the past had changed. Then Hyunwoo lowered his head. "I hid the truth because I was afraid my actions would be exposed." He looked directly at Min-jae. "If these letters become public, our family name will suffer." The entire room waited. Min-jae looked at the documents. Then at his father. Then at Amara. He finally understood something. Silence had already caused enough pain. He straightened his shoulders. A family built on secrets is already broken. He placed the letters on the table. "We tell the truth." Gasps filled the room. At that moment, Amara remembered the final envelope still in her bag. The one marked, "Open this only when you are ready to forgive." With trembling hands, she slowly reached for it. The journey that began with deception ended with a truth far greater than money, a forgotten friendship, a promise kept in secret, and two broken hearts finally finding home. The boardroom was completely silent. Amara carefully opened the final envelope. Inside was one last letter from her father. She unfolded the paper with trembling hands. The familiar handwriting immediately brought tears to her eyes. She began to read. Asterisk, if you are reading this, then forgiveness has finally arrived. Asterisk. Her voice shook. Asterisk, wealth disappears, but kindness travels through generations. Asterisk. The room remained still. Asterisk, if my old friend kept his promise, then you must never carry anger in your heart. Some people protect us in silence. Some sacrifices are invisible. Asterisk. A tear rolled down her cheek. Then she read the final lines. Asterisk, do not measure a person's love by what they say. Measure it by what they quietly do when nobody is watching. Asterisk. Amara slowly lowered the letter. For years, she had believed her father faced every struggle alone. Now she knew the truth. A friendship had survived decades of silence. A promise had crossed continents. She looked at Kang Dae-sung. The older man lowered his head respectfully. Then, to everyone's surprise, Amara walked toward him. "You didn't abandon my father," she said softly. "No," he replied, his eyes filled with emotion. "I simply couldn't stand beside him openly." She smiled through her tears. "Thank you." The room seemed to breathe again. Beside her, Min-jae watched quietly. For the first time in many years, the heavy walls around his heart began to fall. 3 months later, spring arrived. At the international airport where everything had begun, a small ceremony was held. A memorial plaque stood near the main terminal. It honored two men whose friendship had survived time, distance, and secrets. Below their names were simple words. Friendship is the only wealth that grows when shared. Amara stood beside Minjae. Together, they had reopened the partnership their fathers once dreamed of creating, connecting her event company with the airline's international projects. Their friendship had also changed. Slowly. Quietly. Into something warmer. Something neither of them had expected. Minjae looked at her and smiled, a real smile this time. You know, he said softly, you missed your flight that night. Amara laughed gently. Maybe I was supposed to. They looked at the memorial together. The rain, the fear, the lies, it all felt very far away now. Because sometimes the wrong journey leads to the right people. And sometimes being stranded is exactly how you find your way home. The flight that began with deception became the journey that taught them that love is not built on promises, it is built on truth, loyalty, and the kindness we leave behind.